So evening, everyone. Just going to do a quick introduction before I get us started. First off, welcome to our cyber.org's workshop tonight. This particular workshop is on phishing, so it's called Phishy Business. Do not get caught. Uh, my name is Brandon Sally. I'm one of the curriculum development specialists here at cyber.org. So responsible for writing the curriculum, putting together the resources that hopefully you use, and if you're not using them already, you use them by the end of the night. Um, I also do some of the work on the range. So if you're familiar with the range, we will be using the range tonight. If you're unfamiliar with a range, I could go over what that is and introduce to you to how it's used and how it's useful in cybersecurity to teach. Some of the techniques that we use some of the tools, the things that we go through in cybersecurity so that you have a nice and safe environment to work in and don't have to worry about breaking any of your school or your district's devices. A little bit of background information on me, just so you know who I am. I was actually did professional development for a science museum right out of college. So I kind of took the backwards route into teaching. I led various workshops, taught things like robotics, um, several different STEM courses, things like that, and taught teachers how to make it engaging, as if science was not engaging enough already, but to add to the engagement. And then after doing that for a few years, got into the classroom, went the more traditional route with biology, chemistry, forensics, different things like that. Then got into computer science, cyber literacy, ended up teaching several of the courses that cyber.org now offers. After teaching them for a few years, I moved up to being over curriculum for the school I was at. And so then I was over several subjects, did that for a few years, and now I'm at cyber.org. And with me tonight, you have a special opportunity to see Jess. Jess is with us also. Um, Jess, do you want to do a quick intro just to say who you are?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am Jess Hexel. I am one of the newer members to the cyber.org team, and I recently left the classroom after teaching about 12 years of high school math and computer science in California. And if you see how bright my video might be, it's because it is still daylight here in California. So looking forward to this PD with all of you this evening.
All right. And so with that, we'll get started. I do want to make sure that it looks like everybody has their name listed in Zoom, so I want everybody to be able to get their credit for attending tonight's workshop. Um, a couple of people have shared what they taught and what grades. If anybody else would like to share what you teach and what grades you have as far as students, you can drop that in the chat as well. But kick us off with this, just going over the agenda. So we'll do a quick introduction to phishing. Essentially define phishing if you're not familiar with it. I'm sure at some point we have all received a phishing message. Especially being a teacher, you get so many emails and messages from different educational companies, different parents, sometimes good, sometimes bad. It varies. Your admin, your district leaders, things like that. So been there, overwhelmed with emails and messaging systems and various applications associated with being in the classroom. So I'm sure you're familiar with um, phishing. We're going to look at an activity called Phishing Myself, which is from our course Intro to Cybersecurity, which covers grades, a little bit of middle school with 8th grade, and then also some high school grades. And then you'll actually do the phishing lab from cybersecurity, which is our high school course. And then I'll connect it to a few other courses and lessons, and we'll bring in a few other things as well, because we cover phishing in quite a few different areas, even including some of the elementary grades and things like that. So background, your phishing 101. So, and while I talk about this, I want you to kind of think about the last time you received a message like this, and I'll see if anybody wants to share something interesting or fun. But just to give you a basic definition of what we consider phishing is it's a type of online scam where criminals impersonate a legitimate organization to try to steal some kind of sensitive information. In most cases, that information is going to be things like credentials. They're trying to get your information on how to log into a particular website or into a particular system. so that they can gain access and have that unauthorized access. And of course, with that, they could do whatever they deem necessary, whether it be getting access to financial information, your bank, things like that. Um, Even just getting into as a teacher, you could think of a student trying to get into a system to perhaps change grades, um, alter records, and for, different things like that. Traditionally, you would think of phishing as being kind of that old style. You would get an email that had several typos, various things in it, and then it would either promise like a large sum of money. If you respond and send whoever sent you the message, the original email, money in return to initiate the transaction. It's evolved from that basic concept to be much more advanced nowadays. So what I have included is you can see there's a screenshot that was actually a text message that was sent to me, and I saved it so I could throw it into a lesson. Um, but I get messages like that all the time. So they move from traditional email to now things like phishing, which is voice phishing. So someone calls you pretending to be somebody else. You hear about that quite a bit around tax season. People are impersonating like the IRS or different tax companies, things like that, trying to offer specials and deals and any information they can get from you. They can then turn around and use to either gain additional information or gain access to accounts that you have out there. There's also the addition of smishing, which is phishing through text messaging. Um, if you're an iPhone user, it would be iMessage or various messaging services. So there's also several different apps that allow you to message. That's the one shown, so it comes up quite a bit about some kind of either a UPS package or a postal service package or something like that, and they're having trouble delivering it, and they want me to enter this link um, to either fill in the missing information or to go through tracking whatever the package was that could make it. Of course, I know it's phishing because anything that I order, whether it be online or just things that I know that are coming in, they're going to have either a specific account tied to it where I can track it and I already have that number. They're not going to be missing anything um, as far as being shipped to it, but it happens quite a bit. Think about it also, and people make fun of it, but it still happens all the time, is all the messages you get about extending your car's warranty and stuff like that. There's all kind of links and things associated with that, so you have to be careful with that. So those are kind of the categories of phishing, and then we have some things that get into more specific types. We have spear phishing, which is where someone has already gathered intelligence on someone. Um, Usually, it's going to take quite a bit of time and background information. They're going to use open source reconnaissance. They're going to look up maybe where you live, at least what area you live in, what are some hobbies. It kind of deals with what your online profile looks like. And we have quite a few lessons that also talk about how you leave a digital footprint as you interact with individuals online. So they can take some of that information and they can create a phishing essentially message, email, or attack that is aimed directly at an individual. Um, and in this case, say you're known for having pets or things like that, they can make it look like it was something aimed at perhaps giving you a discount at a new pet grooming service or maybe a pet walking service, things like that. So it's a targeted phishing attack for an individual. We also have whaling. Whaling is usually aimed at high profile individuals, so people like CEOs, maybe a public figure. They could be a political figure, a celebrity, someone that is well known and is going to have access to several other resources. So that's considered whaling. And by hitting someone like a CEO, if they're able to gain their credentials into their system, then they, of course, then have access to a much broader system. Someone like a CEO would have much more rights than just an individual person at a lower level in a company, or if they were aiming for somebody that was more their private accounts and things like that. So it happens quite a bit, even though this is something that's kind of been around forever. It's part of human nature to fall for some of these things because they are done so well. Because of that, phishing falls under what's called social engineering. It's meant to play with human nature and your natural reaction to things. Usually it's going to play with your emotions by either having a sense of urgency, there's something important with what they're asking for. There may be a reward, promotion, something like that tied to it that gets you to buy into it. And by playing on your behavior, they're able to get you to fall for that attack. And so that's what we call it a social engineering attack. They can do that a variety of ways. And of course, now everybody likes to mention and bring up how AI affects things. It's becoming more prevalent because AI can be used to generate some of these attacks and things like that. So that's kind of the phishing 101. Um, if you weren't familiar with it, but how it is more than just your basic email. Does anyone want to share any experience with phishing or any fake messages that were interesting that they received? Right. If not, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what our end product for tonight's going to end up looking like. So you don't have to do anything just yet, just watch. But inside the range, I've actually set up a phishing email using our Kali Linux machine. And what I'm going to do is connect to our Windows machine. And so with our range, and I'll give you a little bit of an intro to our range. If you're unfamiliar with how a range functions and what it's used for and things like that, you can see this is all based out of my browser. It's all based in Chrome. Um, as I go back to this page, when you look in here, this is how it's set up for a teacher. And I actually have logins for everybody that I'll give you when it comes time for you to actually build your phishing email. Right now, you can see I have 3 machines launched. I don't have any other machines launched just yet because we're taking time leading up to it. I didn't want the machines to time out before we actually got to that part of the workshop. And so with this, as the teacher, you're able to launch machines. If I hit launch machines, I can pick what type of machine I want to launch. We have an Ubuntu Linux, which is your traditional type of VM or traditional type of Linux machine. I mean, so if you were going to have like a Linux desktop, they're also used for hosting websites and servers. So Ubuntu server is used quite a bit. So when people hear Linux, or if they've used Linux before, in most cases, it's going to be some type of Ubuntu machine. Then we have a Windows 7 machine, which is our vulnerable machine on the range in most cases. Um, we tend to attack it quite a bit. So we like to pick on the Windows 7 because it does have those vulnerabilities. I'll use it for this, but I'm actually going to show you how this could actually work for just about any of the other VMs. We have a Windows Server 22 if you're into networking and want to showcase anything with networking. We have lessons that go with that. We won't use that tonight though. And then we have our Kali Linux, which is our primary machine that we use for attacks. Um, and so with this, being in this virtual environment, the sandboxed environment, it's actually safe to practice these things. So this doesn't touch any kind of network outside of the range. It does have internet access, but it has a restricted internet access based on what we allow it to actually reach out to. So when you access the range on your school network, you have your students on their devices, you're actually only accessing our website at apps.cyber.org, and the machines are not actually touching your network. So you don't have to worry about your students creating a phishing email and sending it out to all the other teachers because those computers would not be able to actually get access directly to that machine. So what I did prior to the workshop starting is actually created a couple of phishing pages just to give you examples of what they look like. So if I go back to the Windows 7, let it load, I'm going to open what we like to call around here Internet Explorer. It's Internet Explorer. It's the best browser to download a different browser. And so open this up. And so it's going to say that I almost said it then, again, Explorer, Internet Explorer cannot display the web page. So I did say these are connected to the internet, but since the normal web page that would pop up on the home page, that will news feeds, different articles, ads, things like that. Since those aren't on our allow list, it can't display that page because we don't allow those types of things to come through. So things like Facebook, Instagram, the other social media websites, things like that are also blocked. So if they try to access it, they would also get a message that says it cannot be displayed. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the URL bar, is type in the IP address to the Kali machine, and I'm going to add a file to the end that I created called email.html. And so if I go to that link, so I have that IP address / email.html, I made this look just like an email. So there's no way to email inside the range. There's not like an app that has email, and I wouldn't, of course, want to log in and actually use my real email to generate a phishing scam. So I just made this look like an email by creating a fake web page, and that's how the lab works. And I'll walk you through those steps here shortly. But it just says, Dear educator, we're excited to announce we're able to provide $1,000 for your computer science classroom, make it engaging. I put thanks, Brandon. Click here for more information. So like I said earlier with phishing, it's creating, it's kind of playing on your emotions. You think, oh, there's a chance I could get money for my classroom. I'm not sure who all has it in their area. I know here where we're based at, we actually have one of the local news stations actually gives away like a weekly amount to different teachers. And so they spotlight like a teacher in a classroom and they provide funding for them to do things with their students. And so it actually seems legitimate. If I were to click on this, there's a couple of things that's going to happen. Um, so if we click on it, the first thing is we're going to have, it's going to say there's a problem with a website security certificate. Now, it doesn't say that there is not a certificate. It just says there's a problem with it. And so you can actually click on more information and it'll tell you that what the error is for, again, Internet Explorer, not the best browser, but there are other browsers out there that would actually give you a full explanation and tell you what's going on. But what it is you get this because it's a self-signed certificate. What that means is basically when I set it up, as I said, this is a safe portal to go through. You can trust me, and I had the machine. Basically, it automatically signs itself. Usually, a website would go through something like what's called a certificate agency. What I'm going to do is hit continue to this website. And you may have seen this for legitimate websites as well, if they let their certificates expire. And then I get this little pop-up. So if you think back to Windows 7, this is actually what the little pop-up, if you didn't change your original picture, looked like when you had to make a change to the hard drive. So it's asking you to log in. And so at this point, it's asking me to log in. It requires, to get to this document, it requires a username and password. I'm going to trust it, even though I know I shouldn't, but I'm going to pretend like I don't know that it's phishing and what we're doing. So I'm just going to enter my information and I'll make up a password and I'll leave the box unchecked. It really doesn't matter, and I'll hit OK. And so now I'll notice it's trying to download a file. And so now even at this point, I may say, well, the page didn't say anything about downloading a file. It didn't ask about opening a file or doing anything like that. So I'm actually just going to hit cancel here because it's starting to get like, not to, make a pun, but fishier and fishier. So I'm going to skip that. I canceled that. And I could even close, what I'm going to do is open one tab just to have it open. I'm going to close this tab to get away from that website because maybe there was something going on. If I go to the Kali Linux side, and so I did some work over here, I had a program running called Phishy. And I'm going to zoom in, make it easier to see. And you can see here that here's what I typed in. So you can see in plain text my username. I typed in Brandon.Sally, and then here is my password. So I used Chinchilla, which tends to be my go-to test password that I have. And that was all through just setting up that fake email or that fake looking page. And so this is still running. I actually tested it earlier, so you can see my little test and password here that I tried just to make sure it was running properly before starting. So now I'm going to try something else though. So I did that with the Windows 7. Let's see what it looks like on the Ubuntu machine. And so just to show you that this can work with the other machine. So if I open this up, this one's not using Internet Explorer, it's using Firefox. Um, let's stay signed out. I'll do the same one. So type in the IP address, email.html. And so again, I'm just trying to make this look more mail. So this you could imagine would be in an application used for mail. So again, same thing. Notice this one though didn't have the certificate issue. It went straight to this, had no problem. It will give us a certificate issue here though. Um, and so here again, potential security threat. If I click advanced, and then this one, and that's nice. The Zoom tools are in my way and I can't click the button. Let's see. So for this one, I hit advanced, and then down here at the bottom, if I can make, move it up at the top. All right, there. So notice this one actually will allow me to view the certificate. And so you can see it originated out of Colorado, Denver. The organization's called Go Fish. So you can see this is the reason why we had that potential security threat. I'm still going to accept the risk and continue. And notice this one has a pop-up come up here. So based on the system and the browser you're using, this particular application that's used to educate about phishing, it actually changes based on the system being used. So for Windows, it had the little Windows pop-up. For this one, it's going to have just a browser pop-up for the Ubuntu. So it's kind of cool. It's not written into the lab like that, but it's cool to show people that because it actually changes based on what the user is using. So I can do something similar. I'll change a different, so instead of doing my full name, and then I'll do a slightly different password and hit sign in. And then it'll ask to save. And then notice another reason I like to show the variety in the machines is here's the actual file. So before I had a little prompt that said, do you want to save, view the file, or cancel? For this one, I have a random string of characters, and then I have this extension DOTX. And if you're unfamiliar with that extension, it is actually a Word template. So I'm gonna actually click it and see what happens, just to show you what it actually looks like. And it'll take it a second to open. So our Ubuntu machine actually has what's called LibreOffice. So it opens up Word documents, and notice it opened up a Word document. And so it actually had a blank Word template built in. So that was that file that Windows couldn't open earlier. I just had the pop up and I just hit cancel. And so this opens up, but notice there's nothing here. There's nothing special about it. If I go back to the Kali Linux, notice my credentials in plain text are again immediately printed on the screen. And so that's demoing it. And what we're going to do now is kind of build up until you get to do this yourself. And so you're going to build your own phishing email. Are there any questions so far? If not, I'm going to show you one other thing just to demo and show you that is kind of fun to do with this. If anyone, because I know elective teachers and science teachers often teach a variety of classes. So over time, I've had teachers who teach computer science, cybersecurity, and they also teach like web design and graphics. If you got any class like that and you wanted to have a little bit of fun, you can actually have someone design a nicer looking page. And so if I type in that same IP address, but instead of email, I'm going to change it to phishing.html. Let's see. And there is a question in the chat. So what's the purpose of the phishing email? Is it to just get the username? So yes. So this particular program is just to get those login credentials. And so it's considered a credential harvester. Um, and so once it gets those credentials, then it has your credentials for that particular system. And you can actually change it to do various things. Um, as you saw, it opened up that Word document or that Word template that just caused Office Libre to open up a blank document. You can actually embed code into that template as well. And so you could get really advanced. And if I were to download that file and open it, I could have some code that automatically runs in the background to do a variety of things. So I would not only harvest credentials from it, but I would also be able to say install a backdoor, install ransomware, do a number of things based on what I put inside that template. So with this one, I created a second web page that makes um, the process look a little bit more legitimate. So it's not just a simple email, it's an actual web page. And so with this, I just had essentially ChatGPT write up a quick little blurb about cybersecurity. And then I created this page. So this page is also hosted in the Kali Linux. If you can see down here, there's a phishing.html, and then I have, if you're familiar with web design and things like that, I have a CSS file down here that is actually powering that page or helping with the content and the design of the page. So it looks a little bit more professional. Um, and so again, phishing is evolving. So we're more moving on from just emails. And then it has this learn more about cybersecurity practices and stay informed by clicking this page. And again, if I click that page, it's going to have another template generate. But notice with this one, it didn't have the login pop up because at that point, it knows that this machine has already gone through that process. So once a machine is accessed, that login and those credentials have been harvested, it only does it one time. And so I would have to go through something like clearing the history and clearing the cache to get it to actually respond again and pick up those credentials. So that's our finished product, what we're going to shoot for. What you're going to do now is, and I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoint, is I'm going to share, go back, an activity called Phishing Myself. This activity, as I mentioned earlier, is pulled from our Intro to Cybersecurity course. And while I am kind of talking about it and rambling on, I'm going to go ahead and drop 3 documents, and hopefully it will let me drop all 3 at once into the chat. It did. And so you should see 3 PDFs, and I promise they're not phishing scams or anything, even though they all 3 say phishing. One of those is called the Phishing Myself product template. So it would be what the students actually use to write out their phishing email to themselves. Then you're going to have the instructions, which is what I have a screenshot here, and I'll open these documents up here in just a second and show you. And then you also had the rubric. So this activity does have a rubric that can help you with grading the actual assignment that you give the students. And so with this activity, it comes from section 2.2, so it's unit 2 in Intro to Cybersecurity. The point of it is for students to use open source intelligence, so anything that's available to them online, to gain any information about their target. The activity has them, as it's called, phishing myself, to fish themselves and craft an email aimed at themselves. But we do have it in there that they could add, change it to where they could create a phishing email aimed at a public figure, celebrity, anything else. You could even have them work with each other. You could have one student target their partner, They could do this a variety of ways, and I encourage teachers to mix it up and add a little bit of variety to it. Um, for the purpose of tonight, you can do it yourself. That way, you kind of already know a little bit of information about yourself. Or if you want to pick a celebrity, you can do that as well. So as you go through this, and I'll go ahead and bring up the actual documents. And let's see, zoom in a little bit. So this is what the first part of the activity looks like. So the instructions, like I just said, use open source intelligence. That's anything available online. Now, this doesn't mean that if you're using it for yourself or you have students using it for themselves, if they have their account access, they shouldn't be using that. It is just the stuff that they can find online. Just like a malicious user, it's whatever is publicly available. And so, question, how does this compare to your one? Actually, I like both of these. The Tony Stark one's great as well. So good point, Denise. And those that are unfamiliar, there's an activity that's actually paired with this. It's in the same unit in intro, where it's aimed at using open source intelligence to find out information about Tony Stark. And so it is kind of related to the Tony Stark from the MCU, so some of the information matches that, but it also talks about some of the other ways that you can gain information. That activity is a lot, and I almost added that particular activity to this workshop. If we have enough time at the end, I'll actually get in and just showcase that one to everybody who doesn't know that one. But I would like both of them, and they do pair really well with each other. So once you have an idea of what your target has, what's out there. So you could look for, and this actually gives you a few things to choose from, kind of help the students along as far as what they're aiming for. But they want to look for things like their age, their birthday, of course, where they live, what are some of their hobbies, who are their relatives, things like that. If they're able to get information or they're able to fish one person, then they may be able to also gain access to family members, friends, people around them that are kind of within that social network to get their information as well. Looking at job, careers, vacation, shopping, different things like that. So everybody, at least that is in the office and they know me or get to know me, or if I come out and do a PD, they know I'm an LSU fan. And so sports team supported is on here as well. But people also talk about shopping, their favorite movies, schools they went to, education, all that kind of stuff as well. You'd be surprised what is out there that is just open source intelligence information, and you really have no control over what actually gets put out there. There's a couple other things to look at, things like Google search, archive if you're unfamiliar, and there's a typo there. I just realized this is archive.org. Um, archive.org actually basically snapshots portions of the internet and saves it. So sometimes when things are pulled off the internet, they're actually still accessible on websites like archive.org. LinkedIn for work, politics actually has donor lookups. The shopping, this one is actually kind of creepy, if you ask me. But you can actually go to Amazon's wish list and you can search anyone's name, and if they have created a public list on Amazon, their name will pop up. Essentially, if they didn't set their list to private only, or shared with a link, it's actually just there for anyone to see. And so it's interesting to like click on this one, and like put yourself in there, put other people you know in there, and see if they're, because if their public list is up, as far as their wish list, you can see what hobbies they're in, what they're looking at purchasing. You can actually find out quite a few details about someone's life just by their Amazon wish list. Spokio and Zillow are on here. These are some of the websites that are actually mentioned in that Tony Stark activity. So especially looking at houses, if somebody has their house in the market, there's a ton of information out there. So as you look at this, and then we switch over to the template, so the phishing myself product template. So the student's name, aka the target. Again, this could be anyone. It could be a public figure. It could be a different student. It varies. And then they would add in the different sources that they have. So anything that they're able to find. So the example is this particular student is trying to learn how to speak Italian, and so they were able to find their Duolingo account based on this profile here. So that was a publicly accessible account. And so as you go through it, think about some of the things uh, that you could do, and then they have this spot here where they could write their email. And in this case, they would just write it out in plain text. It wouldn't be written in HTML or anything like that, like what we're going to end up doing inside of the range. Once they do that, they write the email, then there's the rubric that goes with it. And of course, you could alter the numbers based on how you do your grading system. We know it varies for every school and every district, but the main points of interest here are, did they use the research tools correctly? Were they able to produce the report where they gained information? So did they gather 10 or more of the listed types of information? Were they able to get screenshots of things? And did they provide the documentation? Because they can't just say, I found this, I know here's where they work, here are their hours, things like that, without providing an actual open source. They can't just open up their actual work app that they would track those hours on and put that down. So they need to be looking at something that is public facing. And then the actual phishing email, take that information. So at the beginning, I mentioned spear phishing, that targeted phishing. That's essentially what we're doing with this, is creating a phishing email that is really a spear phishing email, because it incorporates all of that knowledge that we've gained from that open source intelligence. And then does it use proper email format with a greeting body, and then of course an ending, whether it's a thanks or provides any information that they need, and then just overall completion. So as you're looking at that, and again, the email would go there. If you would, what I'm going to do is jump back over here, close that, refresh. And just to show you how this works with a teacher, so take this time to kind of look over the activity and think about, if you were going to write a phishing email for yourself, what would it say? And it just has to be something short. I had the one that said, here's some money to go towards your classroom. Click here to get an opportunity to get that money. So I made it really, really short. So think of what you could write in an email aimed at yourself or even a celebrity, public figure, things like that. While you take the time to think about that, I'm going to get our machine started. So if you want to actually build your phishing email, you're going to do it inside the range, where you can follow along. I'm going to hit launch. We will all need a Kali Linux machine. And what I'm going to do is, so I select Kali Linux. I can go in and pick individually who needs the machine, or I can hit select all. And I hit launch. And then after a couple of seconds delay, it'll start launching those machines. And then I'm also going to launch the Windows 7 for everyone. And those are launching. And while those are launching, I'm adding to the chat a set of logins and a link. So if you would like to build your phishing email, inside the range and actually see what it looks like, you can go to apps.cyber.org. If you click on that PDF and look for your name, and they should be, I believe I put them in alphabetical order by first name. Look for your first name, and you should have a username and a password there. And everybody's password is phishing, all lowercase. And the way this would work, so if I open up like an incognito window, just to show you what it looks like on the student side and what you would be seeing. So if I go to apps.cyber.org, you get information. If you do not have a range account, I highly recommend getting one. You can hit apply for access right here. If I hit it right here, all I have to do is go through this process, click educator, and then once you click educator, you just fill in the information there. The range is free for all K through 12 educators, which is nice. It is actually funded through Louisiana does quite a bit of the funding. So I like to tell people Louisiana has two good things going for it. We have great food and we give a free range to everybody who wants it. If you want to learn more about the range itself, you can click this. This will go to our main landing page on the cyber.org website. You have those logins, you can hit login. And what I'm going to do is pull one of those logins myself. Let's see. And again, the little zoom toolbar gets in the way. All right, move my zoom toolbar out of the way again. Let's see. So on that list of logins, I did have some backups at the bottom. So hopefully no one's using backup 12. So I just picked that username. I'm going to type in phishing as the password. You can see that. Hit log in. And once you're in, so if you did use one of those logins, you should see my name is the classroom. Click on the classroom. This is how the students would see your account as well. And then once I click on that classroom, you can see that the Kali Linux and Windows 7 machines have now booted. And so I can connect to those. As the student in the classroom, you could hit launch. So I can hit launch here. I can launch the Windows server. If you want to do that, that's fine. It's not going to hurt anything to let it launch. And these only cost about 2 cents an hour to run. So we're not going to break the bank by launching a couple extra machines. Thanks, Jess. Jess says if anybody needs help, she can help as well. All right. So that's how it looks as the student. And what I'm going to do to do this, so as I walk through this lab, I'm going to start with the Kali Linux machine. But before you connect to anything, if you've already hit connect, so like if I hit connect here, I can move this bar out of the way. So if you have already connected here goes this and return back to this screen. This is a shortcut I like to mention, kind of a tip also, is when you're running any lab that uses multiple machines, in this case, we're going to need the Kali is actually hosting the phishing application. It's also hosting the web pages that we're using. So we're not going to make that be the victim also. We're going to use one of these other machines. When you have this list view open, if you right click on the tab and hit duplicate, it will have both of these open, and then you can easily open multiple machines. I'm going to actually do it 4 times just to have plenty of extra tabs open. And now I can hit the blue connect button to the Kali. I'll let it load. I'm going to go to one of those other tabs. I'm going to open the Windows 7. And then when the other machines start up, I'll open those as well. But we're going to start inside the Kali machine. So once you're inside the Kali machine, we have to first start the actual phishing program. So you open a terminal, hit the little black and white box up there, and I want to zoom in so you can see this. Extend my window out a little bit. And as you're teaching, especially in the classroom, you're going to always have that student in the back that says they can't see, but they refuse to sit up front. If you hit Control Shift Plus, zoom in on that text. So I'm going to zoom in some so it's easier to see. Once you have that, you're going to run a simple command called sudo, which is going to give you administrative rights to run this particular application. And then the application is called Phishy. So sudo Phishy, and then hit enter. And then once you do that command, you'll get just these 2 lines where it says credential store initiated, and then the server is running on 0.00443. If you're unfamiliar with how that works, that's essentially just saying that it's going to be the loopback address. It's going to be connected to this machine, so the results are going to be printed in this terminal. And 443 is actually a secure channel for accessing the internet. So it's the traditional channel for running things through like a browser and accessing a web page. At this point, you don't want to do anything inside this window. We want this just to sit here so that it can return any results that we get. If you're following along, you can just kind of push it out of the way. You can minimize it if you want to minimize it, but then you have to kind of cycle through which windows are active. So I'm just going to kind of leave it hanging there. I'm going to click on the black and white box again to get another terminal going. And I'm going to do the same thing to make it easier to see is zoom in a little bit. And now we're going to craft our email. So if you took the time to go through the phishing yourself, you can make this custom. You can really add anything that you want, but we're going to start that process. First thing I want to do is I want to navigate to the desktop just so we can see the files. We want the files to be visible so that we know we're making them without having to use extra navigational commands. So I'm going to run a cd desktop. A little trick, if you start to type out the name of a file or directory, you can hit tab to autofill. And now I'm on the desktop. I'm going to run what's called the touch command followed by the name of the file. So touch is used to create a file, and then you just put whatever you want to name the file. You could really name it anything you want, but the key here is we want to make sure it has .html at the end because the Kali machine will then format it correctly to be an HTML file. So when you have that, hit enter, and you should see a file pop up here, over here. It's empty right now, so it's not going to have any kind of special icon. It's just an empty file. And we're going to actually edit that and create that. And what I've done to make this process easier is if you're following along, I have a text file that actually contains the HTML code. And so if you open up that particular text file, you'll see that it's pretty simple. It only has 5 lines to it. Inside of our Kali machine, we're going to run the command nano, which is a type of text editor. Move my mouse out of the way. Nano email.html. And it's going to switch over and look a little bit different. So it's using this nano editor. And so this is where you would actually type in what you want your phishing email to look like. If you're going through the lab, it actually has a screenshot of all the HTML code that you can use. Help students with that because we don't expect them to be really professionals with HTML. I will be the first one to tell you that I am terrible at HTML. I always forget to do something really, really simple. But what you can do is if you open the text file that I put into the chat, it looks like this. So it says participants HTML code and then has these four, or not four, 5 lines. I'm going to highlight this text, right click and hit copy. And so now it's copied to my actual desktop's clipboard. Once I do that, I'm done with this. I can minimize that window. And I want to put it inside of this. Now I can't right click and just paste this in here. It won't accept that. However, when you're working inside the range, if you hit Control Alt Shift at the same time, you'll get this little clipboard that pops out. And it's probably going to have some text here. Whatever the last piece of text that you highlighted inside the range, if you clicked on something, in that case, if you remember, I highlighted that IP address, that 0 with the 443. We can highlight and delete that, but I can actually right click and paste what was inside that text file here. And at this point, we can actually move it over to the range. So what I'm going to do then is I have this text here. I'm going to hit Control A just to make it easier, select all the text, and then Control C, or you can right click and hit copy. So now it's copied to the range clipboard. I can hit Control Alt Shift to close that clipboard. And then if I come over here, right click and hit paste selection, notice this is the text that was inside that text file that I sent you. And at that point, we can start to change things and it kind of makes it a little bit easier. So if you do have students and you're doing this and the students aren't that great at HTML, you can always provide them the HTML and then show them how to copy and paste it into the range too. It makes it a little bit easier to do this particular lab. Um, with Nano, it's a little tricky because I can't just click like here and start typing. You have to use the arrow keys to navigate around. The thing we want to do is we want to be able to change the header. So in this space, whatever the white text is and leaving the H4 and the brackets there, you can change this. And I'm going to say, I'm going to aim my email at Jess. I'm going to say, hello, Jess. Leave it at that. The body of your message goes here. So anything that you would want to type in, you can say, hey, I found this new cybersecurity app to use. Try it out. And so this third line says click. So if we wanted to keep it a link like that original email where it said click here, but notice I added this change IP here. So in this space, we highlight, get your cursor right over the colon and backspace. And you'll want to enter your Kali IP address. The Kali IP address, yours can be found either in the tab of the browser. It can also be found if you click other machines. It would be that IP address right there as a student. If I close that in the original terminal before I open the Nano editor, notice it's also right there. So we try to provide IP addresses all over the place. That way they're easy to find. Um, so there's the IP address. And so I need to type in the IP address here. So I'm going to make it 10.15. If you haven't noticed before, all of our machines on the range start with 10.15. The range was actually launched on October 15th. Um, After that, so it says click here. We make sure that our IP address is the correct one. We make sure that our message is there. Notice this line extends outward a little bit, but it just says external. So there's nothing to change there. And then it says thanks. You can change that message if you want. And then you can change the sender's name. So really pretty simple. If you provide the template, it kind of expedites the process. Like I said, it would make it easier for some of the students. In the lab, they would have to type out all of the HTML coding. So the brackets, the P, this href, things like that as well. But that goes through all the steps inside the lab. So it will walk them through that process. Once you do that, and you have whatever you want to craft, it's ready to go. You just need to save it. The way we save it is you can hit Control X. It's going to ask you down at the bottom if you want to save the modified buffer. It's essentially just asking if you want to save the changes that you made to the file. You'll type Y for yes. It's going to ask you what do you want to name the file. We've already named the file. We're not going to change the name. So all you have to do is hit enter. So Control X, Y, and enter. And notice this is now changed to be more of an HTML looking file. If you can't see it, it looks like a little globe. So that means that now this machine recognizes that as a true HTML file. If I try to open it, it would actually open up Firefox to view that file. So now this file's sitting on the desktop. It's not accessible online yet. We still have to move it over. That's the second part of the lab. But I'll pause here. Any questions about anything so far? Had a few questions come through about other things. I think I got everybody. Um, if there's not, then we will move this over to the server, start the server, and get it hosted so that we can play our victim. All right. So like I said, this is sitting on the desktop. We need to move it over to the directory that houses everything for, we use an Apache server for the Kali. To do that, I do need administrative rights. So I'm going to use sudo again. I'm going to use the command copy because I just want to copy this file over to that folder to be hosted. The name of the file, remember you can type the first few letters, hit tab, and it will autocomplete the name of the file. And then anything hosted by the Apache server is stored in what's called root var www dot or forward slash not dot html. And then it moves over to that. And at that point, it's hosting online. In the background, I can actually minimize this now. In the background, this is sitting here waiting, and that email is available online for the other machines inside the classroom or inside this account. So if I go over to Windows, close that, open up Internet Explorer one more time, and notice this is a different machine because I did log in as a student. And so I kind of got out of the teacher account. So this is actually a fresh machine. So inside the URL bar, I'm going to type in my Kali IP address. And even if you did not build your own email, you can actually still type in my IP address and the destination of the email, and you would actually still be able to get to it as long as we're in the same classroom inside the range. So if you do want to do that, if you just want to open the Windows 7 or really any of the other machines, if you type in that inside the URL bar of the browser, then you should, oh, don't tell me it's going to mess up. Let's see. Oh, I did forget one step. Close that. Forgot one step inside this terminal where we moved that over. We need to start the Apache server. So the Apache server cannot host anything if it is not actually running. So sudo service Apache to start. So sudo, we need admin rights service. It's just telling the machine that we're going to change the status of a service. The service we're changing is the Apache 2, and we're telling it to start. Hit enter, and after about 2 seconds, it will actually start that server. So it starts up very, very fast. I'm going to move back over here. All right, try this again, and it saved it. So, and now it pops up. Oh, my HTML is kind of a little messed up. So I think I may have lost something copying it over. Let's see. Nano email. Click. Close. See what I will do. Check this one. Looks like I left out one little line of code. Let's see, CD desktop. Yep, so I forgot this little part here. If I can find that line.
If you zoom out, I may be able to help you.
Okay. I think I got it. I forgot to actually
Yes.
type in a here. So I just had click and then it was like blank.
You still need that anchors like /A. You need to close it.
Uh,
What about that target blank? If you don't want to keep it, you can, yeah.
just delete it.
You can delete it because it's a class and blank. You kept it blank.
Yeah. See, I told y'all I'm terrible at HTML. All right. So I made that change. I'm gonna have to bring back. So if you hit up while you're inside the terminal, you can bring back a previous command, which makes this really, really easy. So I can bring back the command of copying it back to that server. It'll automatically overwrite whatever's there. So if the file has the exact same name, it'll just overwrite it. On the Windows side, you will have to refresh the page though. And now it says click here. Awesome. Thank you for that. Yes, I am. If you need HTML help, I am not the person to ask. So if you click here, notice we get the original page of having the certificate issue that we got in the beginning that I showed you. I'm gonna still hit continue to this website and we get that login. And so I can do whatever. Actually, I was targeting Jess, so I'm gonna type in Jess and then what can I make Jess's password? It's not going to be chinchilla because that's my password. I'm just going to make it first date. And I hit OK. And again, it doesn't matter if you want to download this file. I can hit save this time just to show you how it's different. You'll get the little save prompt, hit save as. If I try to open it, it's not going to know how to open it because this machine doesn't have any kind of application that's going to be able to open that Windows doc template. And so nothing's going to really work there. So I can hit close. If I go back to this, and so you can see I got a response. I typed in Jess and I put California, and you can see that that popped up there. So it tells you from the moment it actually makes the connection, where it makes the connection, so what machine was actually targeted. So it picked it up from 10.15.17.69, which is our Windows IP address, and then gives that plain text login information. So if somebody wanted to jump on one of the other machines and put in my IP address, email, make sure you refresh it now that I made those changes. Then you could actually see your credentials pop up in plain text. I just ask you don't use your real credentials for any of this. I always tell people when I'm demoing it, even if you were just practicing it with yourself, make it kind of muscle memory and just common procedure to make up some kind of password and username. Once you do that, that is the actual phishing lab portion, is building out that email, moving it over to the server using Phishy to collect those emails. So somebody's connected. So real Jess, best coast, haha. But this is one of those labs that is fun. As the teacher, if you were to get Phishy running, create a web page and actually just have it on the screen to where the credentials pop up kind of the way I have here. You can have that running and then have the students just play the victims and kind of make it an introduction lab. They don't have to go through the entire lab uh, in the initial portion. You can just show them how it works, give them an example of what they're doing, um, and then have them go through the full setup process. It kind of helps their mind, wrap around what's going to happen and what it should look like at the end. And so that pops up there. Any questions about the lab?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
I don't click on phishing email, so I really don't know. And I've never gone through an actual login with for a phishing email. So my question is, do all phishing emails always have a login that they need? Obviously, if they want your username and password, they have to have a login. So there's no, if you just click on it but don't fill in your username and password, the phishing really is ineffective, correct?
For this particular case, yes. So if you just connect to it, but you don't actually type anything in, then it'll pop up. It'll say that there was a request received. It'll mention that the handshake occurred. It'll list the IP address, but it actually doesn't produce any of those credentials. So those credentials don't come up. So if you noticed, it actually uh, recognized that it connected to Jess's machine before she actually sent in that information, and that's not sent until she actually hits OK. The problem with this is, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, is the way Phishy works is you can actually embed additional code with it. And so you can
Right.
install additional things to it. So we're not trying to take it that far. Even though I will tell you, I've been playing around and trying to create a new lab to go with this and use kind of the same tool and use that process to install like a backdoor. If you opened it and a backdoor was installed, then you run the risk of what's called like a privilege escalation. Somebody could use that backdoor to then, if they could somehow move within the system, escalate their privileges, they could gain access to the passwords file. And you could fall victim what's called it's called a pass the hash attack. Essentially, they would extract the hash files that contains your password and credentials, and then they could run it through another application that could perhaps break that password hash. And so they could take the long route and do it that way as well. And in that case, you wouldn't actually have to click on any, you would just have to click on the file itself. Once that connection is made, they would have access to the system.
Thank
I
you.
have
I
a
think, yeah.
question. I have a question too. I have used a few of the labs before, and in those situations, the students would create, like, write the code on Kali, Linux, and then on Windows 7, they would be both the hacker and the victim. In
Mhm.
this case, can we kind of pass on the IP addresses so they can go on their each other's machine or receive information, or is it just each student on his or her computer and then be both the victim and the hacker?
So the way the range is set up is that any machine inside this classroom, so say this is your classroom, and you have, instead of educator, these are all students. All of these machines can talk to each other. So you can easily have one victim or one student play the victim and one play the attacker. And then they could flip roles. Um, or you could do it, one day you're the student one is the attacker, student two is the victim, and then the next day have them flip roles. It can work any way. All of these machines, regardless of which teacher or student is tied to it, they can actually all talk to each other inside this classroom. That's how they're sandboxed. So
Okay,
yes,
perfect.
I highly encourage mixing up those roles and like having students play the attacker and one play the victim and then mix them up a little bit because it makes it more engaging. To me, it makes it a little bit more fun um, instead of just attacking yourself.
So it applies to all the labs, right?
Yes, so anything that
Okay.
uses two machines like that, you can actually separate them out to where the students could each play different ones. Another example is, and this is in our Intro to Linux course, we have a couple of labs that we've started doing that. We're kind of creating labs more like that. We have the students SSH into each other's machines and kind of control each other's machines remotely that way.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to show you where you can find some of these labs and some of the other things.
I have a,
Um,
I have a real quick question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
oh, you're good.
How long will it take for the recording of this to go up online, or how do we get a recording of this
So
particular? Yeah.
um, I'd have to double check when. So the recording processes very quickly, and it comes to me. I'm not sure if they're doing any kind of like editing to, and if they want to put it on Canvas with some of the other recordings, or if they want us to just send it out. What I can do is usually after any PD, I send out a follow-up email the next day. So if they're good with just me sending out the raw recording, I can send you a straight recording that way. But I think eventually it's also going to be put on Canvas. I'll just have to double check and make sure that it's okay to send out. Usually it's fine just to send out the recording to all those that participated in the actual workshop. All right, so as far as the curriculum and where you can find these different things on phishing, let's say if you don't have access to the curriculum, again, just like the range, I highly encourage you to sign up. That's how you get all the steps and things like that. You won't have to try to remember anything. On our main page, you can click sign up for curriculum access, go through the same application. Just note they're two different applications due to funding sources. If you already have an account, log in. You get to Canvas. Yours may look a little bit different than mine because I have every course that I've ever done anything in on my homepage. I have it favorited, but it usually defaults to elementary, middle school, and high school. The lab portion that we went through, crafting the email, setting up Fishery, is actually in cybersecurity. So if I click on cybersecurity, and this one has, I think, the most files, so it takes the longest to load. Um, Pretty quick, actually. That seems like a little bit quicker than usual. Um, as far as phishing, even though I've looked at it a million times, I always do a control F on the page to find it. But here's the actual lab. So under Unit 2, Social Engineering and Access Control or Cybersecurity, you can find the lab phishing. And so if I click on that, download the PowerPoint, and I'm just going to show you the kind of raw PowerPoint here. We won't go through the whole thing, but it tells you what you need. The Kali Linux, the Windows 7. You saw, though, it also works on the Ubuntu. So if you want to mix it up, feel free to mix it up. And it uses Phishy. And it kind of goes over. It's going to list the objectives. So if you're testing towards Security Plus, it'll give you an objective that ties to it. It'll explain what phishing is, kind of like I did at the beginning. And then it tells you how to set up those environments, how to get the information, starting fishery, setting up the email. So we went to the desktop, did a touch email.html, went through Nano Editor to craft our email, and then here is the actual email. And so this one uses, if you're familiar with this, a Brooklyn 999 reference, but it actually goes to Raymond Holt. It's click here to update your system. So it makes it look like it's a system update. Then it goes through starting the server. So the same steps that we had, and then here's what that product looks like. But again, I like it just to add a little bit more fun to it, customize it, make it your own. Um, Students may not get the reference. You may get the reference if you're a fan of the show, but then you go through that. And then this is the same pop-up that we saw for the Windows 7 machine. So playing the victim, and again, you can either save, cancel. At this point, it's too late. Your credentials have already been harvested. And then they come out and see the results. And then there's a section on defending against a phishing attack. As far as let's see, so we did that. So tips on phishing and how not to get caught is first recognizing a phishing attempt. They're going to have a deceptive email address. You know, if you're used to getting emails from a certain person, when I was in the classroom, and even as I moved up to be more part of the administrative team, it seemed like every year there were emails that would come through that were phishing attempts by someone pretending to be our principal. And all they did was they just copied her name and essentially made like a Gmail out of it, or someone made like an Outlook email out of it. It was various things that they were able to change. And they sent out emails trying to get people to click on things. But deceptive email addresses, look for typos, awkward wording, or the tone. Nowadays, since AI is, like I said, making things harder to recognize, um, and they're getting craftier and craftier at making things look legitimate, is then look at the tone of the message. Are they trying to push you towards doing something, having that sense of urgency, things like that? Um, this is an important one, is hover above any links to reveal the actual URL. So if you just hover your mouse above it, it'll show you where it's directing you. Be mindful of the attachments, because they can have that embedded code. So that one in particular downloaded that Word template, and so it could have had code that was malicious there. If you do get a suspicious email and you're not sure about it, um, always inform your IT department. I know for the school I was at, we only had one IT person. So it was, they were kind of often overwhelmed, but make sure they know about it. And they're often going to say they want to see the email. That doesn't mean forward the email as is. Usually what they would prefer is forward it as an attachment. And every email application has a different way to do that, but usually it's an option on the email itself. Usually it's like other options, like clicking the three dots, or just somewhere across the top of the application, it'll say forward email as an attachment. And what that'll do is kind of package that email so that anything that's active on that email doesn't automatically try to load or download or something like that, like images and things. And then the IT department, because what they're going to want to look for is they're going to want to examine the headers of that email and see where it actually came from. If you think you have been a victim of phishing, try to immediately change your passwords, notify your colleagues, let people know. I know it's, you may not want to because you're like, oh, I fell for this. I can't believe I fell for it. But oftentimes with phishing, some of these are what it's going to do is essentially scan your address book and send out a similar email to other people. And so if you let them know that, hey, this occurred, you can perhaps prevent them from falling victim as well. And then, of course, enable two-factor authentication where possible. The thing is, even with two-factor authentication, malicious users, hackers are figuring out ways to kind of circumvent that. They've actually found ways to send out a two-factor authentication notification. So the person that would actually get that notification as if they were the one that was trying to sign in, and it's triggering that same step. And so what happens is they kind of get like a fake notification at first, they authenticate it, and then they'll get an actual one later. So they're getting really, really tricky with some of these phishing scams. So just some of the tips that we have and I have. There's also a couple of other things that talk about phishing. So if you look in a course called Range Activities, it's actually aimed at, it's in the 6th through 8th or the middle school grade band or that particular category. But some of these labs are actually fairly advanced. Some are a little bit more advanced than some of the high school labs based on what topic it's covering. But there is one called Gamer Exclaimer. And so this one uses a different tool. It uses the SE Toolkit, has the students create a fake, what looks like a page to get a reward for a game. And when they click redeem, it'll actually go to a cloned Google web page. They sign in with their Google credentials, and then those are harvested on the Kali side. So it kind of has the same feel, but it looks a little bit different and it uses a different tool. With that one and having an actual Google page pop up as far as the login, and that being a cloned website, it actually looks pretty legitimate. And you put yourself in the shoes of a student, especially a student who really loves gaming. If they're trying to get some kind of promotional reward out of it or a loot box or something like that, they could easily fall for a phishing scam like that.